You know when you hit that part of the book where you can feel an info dump coming and you know that the story is about to hit pause to start explaining things. You've got important information that needs to be conveyed, but whenever you try to write it, the scene starts to feel like an encyclopedia section. So, if you want to prevent readers from getting bored before you even get to the important stuff, then here are 7 ways to keep the reader engaged. Rule number 1, the information has to matter. Only dump information that's relevant to the scene and moving forward. First, you have to understand what type of information goes into these sections. It has to have direct impact over the characters and the plot. New information should change a character's understandings and priorities so that it can affect their decisions moving forward. And this will impact the plot through their actions. It can either come into play right away with a direct reaction from the characters, set up action that's paid off later in the book, it can change how the character develops or change the character's lengths. Make the information personal. This could be forcing a personal reevaluation, who they are, what they want, what they're willing to risk or tolerate. Or it can be by changing their interpretation of current and past events or of other characters. This can create new doubts, fears, or suspicions. From this point on, their goals, interactions, and choices change as the new information impacts how they move through the story. Fourth, reframes the meaning of what's happening. It shifts alliances, creates suspicion, raises stakes, adds a deadline, or complicates a goal. The characters might not explode into action immediately, but their behavior changes. They hesitate, lie, test someone, change tactics, or start watching for a threat. This altered behavior is what drives the plot forward. A good example of this is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. The Council of Elrond, the lore dump, so what the ring is and why it's dangerous, works because it's tied to an immediate high-stakes problem. What do we do with it right now? It's exposition inside a decision scene. A quick test. If nothing changes because the reader learned this, then cut it out or change its place. Cut out the fluff and only show what's relevant. Way number 2, make the reader want the information. Don't hand the information to the audience or start with the answers. You have to make the readers ask the question and want the information instead of tolerating it. Readers only hate information when it feels unearned. You want to create questions in the reader's minds as the story moves forwards. It should feel more like a mystery than confusion from lazy writing. Why does the protagonist go quiet when a certain topic is brought up? Why does everyone else call him a hero, but he looks sick whenever it's mentioned? Why did his mentor stop training the student mid-lesson like he saw something frightening? And why is there a rule in the group that no one mentions person X? Mystery creates curiosity, which makes explanation feel like a reward. There are a couple ways to do this. Show something that doesn't make sense and matters. Something weird happens, this causes a danger or cost, and now the reader wants to know why. Promise a consequence. Hint that not knowing will hurt someone. The character says, whatever you do, don't answer the door after midnight, then the reader instantly wants to know what the danger is. You can also withhold one key piece. Give 80% of the context, but withhold the 20% that changes everything. The reader thinks they understand until one detail doesn't fit. For example, you explain the city's peace treaty, but people still carry knives and avoid certain streets. Now the reader wants the real story. You especially want this when you want to add a character backstory. You want the reader to create questions about a certain character or the relationship between two characters so that the explanation is satisfying instead of irrelevant and boring. Third, make the information feel relevant now. Only explain what the reader needs to understand the current decision or danger. Limit it to a few sentences or a couple of paragraphs so that it's sneaky and not an obvious info dump. In these cases, info dumps can help avoid confusion. Most of the time you want to spread your world-building, character designs, and backstories across the book, but sometimes it's useful to introduce information so that the reader immediately understands a crucial world-building aspect or character's personality and how this will impact the scene. This is especially useful for magic or social systems. Most of the time you want to show, not tell, but sometimes, in order to keep the reader engaged, they need to understand some basics, so it's important to deliver the information in a way that doesn't confuse them and keeps them engaged. A quick world-building example is in the Hunger Games. Right before the arena, we get the key rules. There's one winner, sponsors matter, and the strategy is to survive. This information immediately changes what Katniss does once the games start. The key here is to make the information useful, relevant, and avoid confusion. 4. Stop pausing the story. Explain while the story is still moving. Don't stop the scene to deliver lore or backstory. Give the reader something they want at the same time. This works because motion distracts from the dump feeling. The reader feels like they're still watching the plot and not listening to a lecture. A simple structure is to create one action beat, followed by a microfact, followed by a consequence. A character does something, you slip in the rule, the history, or an explanation, and this has an impact on what happens next. One way to do this is to teach through action. One character is threatening another and slips in a brief history lesson as a warning, like, this could happen to you too. Or a character is learning to fight and keeps failing, and while they're still struggling to fight, their opponent is talking to them. In The Matrix, Morpheus uses Neo's training session to explain the rules. The explanation lands because Neo is actively failing and adapting in real time. The key here is to not slow down the pace and keep the momentum. 5. Use urgency. Exposition becomes natural when the character has a reason to explain things clearly and quickly. Urgency justifies blunt explanation. In real life, people do explain things outright under pressure. This helps raise the stakes. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians in The Lightning Thief, the "you're a demigod, Greek gods are real, and this is why monsters are after you" explanation hits while Percy's in immediate danger and being rushed to Camp Half-Blood. It's urgent exposition because the information is required for his survival right now. It answers what's hunting him, where to go, and who to trust. 6. Take advantage of the breathing moments. Between high-intensity scenes, you get a slower, character-centric window where readers naturally tolerate more reflection and explanation. That's where exposition can land cleanly, because it feels like processing and not pausing. This tactic works because it lets exposition come with emotion, and emotion is what makes information memorable. It creates space for characters reacting or coming to terms with something. And breathing room doesn't just mean a pause in the story. It means the story keeps moving, just inward. So, how to do this? You can place it in the aftermath of action, like a character bandaging a wound, walking home, or sitting at the edge of the city. Have the characters be going through some emotion, anger, shame, relief, fear. Have the information be tied to that emotion so that the explanation is triggered by what the character is feeling. Or create a shift in emotion, such as anger turning to confusion and then reflection. Make it personal. And you can end with a forward-facing choice. End the breathing moment with a decision that points into the next scene so you don't lose momentum. One caution: this only works if the information is still relevant and applicable and not random history. Remember that a quiet moment is the best place for emotional meaning, and an action moment is the best place for urgent rules and instructions. 7. Use exposition breadcrumbs. In most cases, it's better to spread the information across a series of scenes or beats within the scene as opposed to a stack of thick paragraphs. Keep the reader on their heels by revealing a bit at a time. This makes the audience more forgiving, or ignore that it's an info dump. Readers accept a lot of information if it arrives in small payments, especially when each payment is immediately useful. For breadcrumbs, you want to hint and foreshadow at more information to come. This is mostly useful for if you want to set up information for later scenes that isn't immediately relevant. You don't want to do something like info dump relationships or parents' death immediately. An example from one of my books: Scene 1. We see two characters have a strained relationship, yet they're familiar with each other. Scene 2. We learn they used to be childhood best friends, setting up the question of why. 3. We hint at some tragic event having torn them apart. 4. We learn that one character's impatience led to both their parents' death. This happens in the first act. So throughout Acts 2 and 3, more of the mystery of the falling out is resolved, hooking the readers along. Now, when not to use an info dump? Cut it if nothing changes. If it doesn't alter decision stakes or meanings, and the scene makes sense without the explanation, then it doesn't belong there. If it's needed elsewhere and you're only using it for setup, then delay it. Move the information to the moment it becomes necessary. If it's just history, not a rule, cost, or consequence, then delay it or cut it out entirely. Cool lore belongs after the reader is hooked, or sprinkled as flavor, not delivered as a block. Third, if you can show it in one action, don't explain it in 5 sentences. Let the audience learn through behavior: rituals, taboos, fears, competence, mistakes, and consequences. This is especially useful for teaching through consequences. Instead of explaining the rule up front, show someone break it and let the consequences teach the audience. In A Quiet Place, you learn that sound equals death because one loud mistake immediately triggers danger. You want to balance show versus tell. Show whenever you can. Tell only the minimum needed to prevent confusion and keep the scene moving. If it's backstory that exists only to justify a character, don't summarize it. Show it through present-day triggers and choices, like avoidance, overreaction, lies, and protectiveness. Then reveal the facts later as payoff. So, in summary, infodumps should be relevant now, earned so that the reader wants it, tied to an action or emotion, delivered in small bites, and followed by a payoff, a consequence or choice. If it starts to feel like homework, it will cost you readers, so use them wisely.